वक्फ बिल पास होने से देश का विभाजन आगे बढ़ जाएगा।
Now you are going for Muslims. Next you will go for Christians. Next you will go for Jain. Next you will go for Parsi.
जो प्रॉपर्टीज वक्फ की थी उनको हड़पने की सारी तैयारी कर दी आपने उसके अंदर। हम क्या मिसलीड कर रहे हैं इसके अंदर, आप बताइए।
वो बिल कानून बनेगा तो फिर हमारी मस्जिदें छीन ली जाएंगी, दरगाहें छीन ली जाएंगी, कब्रिस्तान को खत्म कर दिया जाएगा, ईदगाहें नहीं बरकरार रहेंगी।
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today the Supreme Court has laid down in black and white what the government has been saying all along, that the new Waqf law is not a weapon against the minorities, not a land grab attempt by the government, not an assault on religious freedoms. Yes, viewers, the entire narrative that has been carefully spun by the opposition today came crumbling down under Supreme Court scrutiny. In its interim verdict, while hearing close to 100 petitions opposing the amendments made to the Waqf law, the court today refused to stay the entire law but made changes to some of its provisions. Let's first start with the two clauses that have been put on hold. The provision that allows only a person practicing Islam for at least 5 years to create a Waqf has been stayed by the courts, but only till the time rules are framed to determine how will this be verified. Once the government completely free to make the rules, notifies them, then this objection also goes away. The Supreme Court further stayed a provision which empowered a senior government official to determine whether a property declared as a Waqf is government property and pass orders, since it violates the separation of powers. The Supreme Court has also capped the representation of non-Muslim Waqf bodies, 3 out of 11 in state Waqf boards and 4 out of 12 in the Central Waqf Council. Apex Court has also said that there should be an endeavor to ensure that the CEO of the Waqf board should be a Muslim. After the verdict, all sides claimed vindication and victory.
They have not stayed all the provisions, the complete act, but certain provisions have been stayed, like the provision that said that you have to be a Muslim for 5 years have been stayed, because there is no mechanism to determine whether someone has been a Muslim for 5 years or not.
So there is no ST on the amendments. Only there is a interim order. Those works which are not registered, they will not be treated as Waqf property.
कलेक्टर के जो जजमेंट होते हैं वो तो पहले भी अपील होते रहे हैं। बाकी मेरा ये मानना है कि जो नया वाला कानून है वो 99.99% एक तरीके से इफेक्ट में है, उसमें कोई रोक नहीं लगेगी।
Well, you heard senior advocate Ashwini Upadhyay saying that 99% of the Waqf Amendment Act has been upheld and that the suggested changes are minuscule. However, the opposition has been quick to declare today's verdict a tight slap in the face of the government and a substantial win for not just them but also the members of the Joint Parliamentary Committee who submitted dissent notes but were ignored.
सरकार की साजिश और सरकार की मंशा पर माननीय उच्चतम न्यायालय ने बड़े पैमाने पर रोक लगा दी है, अंकुश लगा दी है, तो पूरे देश में अपनी जमीनें दान करने वाले लोग धार्मिक कामों के लिए, सामाजिक कामों के लिए, जिनको ये डर था कि सरकार उनकी जमीनें लूटने की कोशिश करेगी, फौरी तौर पर उनको बहुत बड़ी राहत मिली है।
ये जो इंटरिम ऑर्डर आया है, इससे जो कानून मोदी सरकार ने बनाया है, इससे वक्फ प्रॉपर्टीज का तहफ्फुज नहीं होगा, प्रोटेक्शन नहीं होगा और एंक्रोचर्स को रिवॉर्ड किया जाएगा।
कि बीजेपी आरएसएस वक्फ की जमीनों को कब्जा करके इस देश के पूंजीपतियों को बेचना चाहती थी। हम सब लोगों को सर्वोच्च न्यायालय से भरोसा था कि वहां से न्याय मिलेगा। जो फैसला आज आया वो एनडीए के मुंह पे एक ऐसा करारा तमाचा है।
एक ही मजहब के लोगों को जो है निशाना बनाया जा रहा है। अच्छी बात है कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने भी इस चीज को समझा है। हुकूमत का इल्जाम है कि गैर कानूनी तौर जो है किसी वक्फ ने जमीन पे कब्जा किया हुआ है। अब हुकूमत उस जमीन को वापस नहीं ले सकती।
The devil, viewers, however, lies in the details. It is not what has been done away with, but what has been retained that we need to pay attention to. Now, the most talked about issue that has been the Waqf by user provision. Basically, any property that has been used for religious purposes for a long time can be recognized as Waqf property, even if it has not been registered. This clause has been deleted in the new act. The petitioners have argued that this was done since government wanted to grab Waqf land. However, the Supreme Court has completely rubbished this theory. It has stated that the rationale behind the charge and the change is to stop the menace of rampant encroachment on government land that has been happening, and so it cannot be called an arbitrary statement or clause in the act. More importantly, the Supreme Court concluded that the contention of the petitioners that the land vested in the Waqfs would be grabbed by the government if Waqf by user is done away with holds no water. So the Supreme Court has said two things. Waqf by user is not something that is wrong, and all the fear-mongering in the dustbin today. Also, what they have stated very clearly is that the government is not planning to take away your masjids, not planning to take away any land that is registered or being used for religious purposes. Crucially, the Supreme Court also refused to stay the Waqf Act being brought under the purview of the Limitations Act of 1963, which basically means that the arbitrary claims of classifying entire villages as Waqf land, like in Tamil Nadu, like in Andhra Pradesh, should now be a matter of history. And that is not all. Here are 6 more reasons why the interim verdict is, in fact, a setback for those who have been trying hard from Sansad to the streets to somehow put on hold the reform as persecution. First of all, the opposition wanted all amendments to the act be done away with. The Supreme Court has said no merit in this plea. So that's, staying of the act has been ruled out. The reforms have been, the staying of the reforms has been ruled out. It has also backed the logic behind deletion of Waqf by user. Then the Supreme Court has also refuted claims often made by the likes of Asaduddin Owaisi and his ilk that the amendments deprive Muslims of practicing their religion and religious practices. Remember the whole masjid chhin li jayegi rhetoric? Well, that has been completely countered by the Supreme Court, and therefore the centre calls this verdict good for parliamentary democracy. Listen in to the government's.
एक तरीके से पार्लियामेंट ऑफ इंडिया का जो डिसीजन है उसको कायम रखा, जजमेंट का स्पिरिट और जो पूरा संपूर्ण ऑर्डर का भाव को मैं कहना चाहता हूं, पार्लियामेंट्री डेमोक्रेसी के लिए ये जजमेंट बहुत अच्छा संकेत है।
जिस तरह से वक्फ को लेकर के पूरे की पूरे अराजकता, उद्दंडता की पराकाष्ठा थी, उसको लेकर के अलग अलग तरह के कन्फ्लिक्ट दिखाई पड़ते थे, कंफ्यूजन दिखाई पड़ते थे, वो करेक्ट हुआ है।
फैसला सुप्रीम कोर्ट का आया है। एक तरह से सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने लोकसभा राज्यसभा द्वारा पारित इस वक्फ अमेंडमेंट एक्ट के वैधता पे मोहर लगा दी है।
And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings me to the legitimate question on the Newshour tonight. Will those who were fear-mongering on the basis of the Waqf reforms now submit an apology and submit papers if they actually own properties? That's the question, and that's the debate coming up on the other side.
You're watching the Newshour at 9, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
Joining the debate tonight, Shehzad Poonawala, national spokesperson of the BJP. Also joining me this evening, Ishkaran Bhandari, advocate in the Supreme Court. Faizan Kidwai, national spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party. Vivek Srivastava, political analyst. Advocate Shadab Chauhan, leader of the AIMIM. But my first question goes to Sanjay Jha, Congress leader. And Sanjay Jha, my question to you is very, very simple. The fear-mongering that Waqf reforms, the law will completely take away the rights of the Muslims, the government is targeting the land of the Muslims, all that has been thrown out of the window. Yes, there are some changes, but the fact is, neither are the amendments bad in law according to the Supreme Court, nor is the Supreme Court saying that wherever you put a handkerchief, that land becomes a Waqf land. That practice is not going to work. It has to be registered, and registered lands will only be recognized, and there will be, in any case, as per the law, not retrospective taking away of the land, but prospectively, yes, that's the rule of the land, and that is the law of the land that will prevail. So is this a victory for the government?
Navika, good evening to you and to all my fellow panelists today. You know, I think you've been very candid in expressing both sides of the argument. But the very fact that today the Supreme Court has stayed at least 5 principal items that were incorporated in the amendment bill is itself, I think, an embarrassment for the government. Because, you know, that manifests the political intent of the BJP-led government. Now, I don't want to get into details because we have the whole program for that. But look at the one important aspect of the stay. That is on the separation doctrine, where what was the government trying to do in this amendment bill? Empower a local district collector who, like the police and institutionalized force, reports to the state government or political party and can be subject to abuse. They were giving the local district collector the power to adjudicate on matters of a dispute, and that has been taken away by the stay order. So obviously there is a very clear message to the Modi government that your intent was not absolutely transparent. And think about it, Navika, that even on the appointment of, you know, non-Muslims to the state board or to the central council, there is a cap to ensure that at no point will the representation get skewed. And they have also been told you have to ensure that the CEO should be, as far as possible, which means that you are expected to have somebody from the Muslim community fit enough to assume the role. I think there's a larger message in this stay. Don't forget that what is the Chief Justice said at the very beginning, that we rarely, in the rarest of cases, do we believe that a law passed by Parliament will be unconstitutional. The electoral bond was, of course, an extraordinary scam, and the Supreme Court had to intervene. But even in this case, the very fact that 5 significant clauses have been stayed is a message basically to the Modi government that you cannot afford to bulldoze a community just because it is in a minority, and you can't do it in this very, you know, brusque manner, bulldozing people left, right.
Sanjay Jha, to the contrary, my understanding is that yes, you know, the separation of power doctrine, very well taken, that has, you know, been scrapped and stayed by the Supreme Court. But the entire appeal against the amendments of the Waqf law was that nothing should happen. Everything has been okayed by the Supreme Court. 2 changes have taken place. One, that cap that you're talking about, and one, the separation doctrine. In the cap, it was never the government's intention to have a majority of non-Muslims. That was stated in the act, and that's exactly what the Supreme Court has done. But Shehzad Poonawalla, why are they not understanding that whatever fear-mongering that was being done by the opposition has been thrown out of the window by the Supreme Court? Masjids are not being taken away. Lands will have to be registered. There is a limitation. You can't pick up, you know, lands 4,000 years old and begin to start making claims on that land. All of that has been seen as good in law and bringing transparency. So what is Mr. Sanjay Jha talking about?
First of all, Navika, let me start on a very happy, positive note that Congress should immediately revoke suspension of Sanjay and give him the role of Chief Positivity Officer, CPO. मतलब कि कुछ नेगेटिव भी हो, उसमें भी अगर पॉजिटिव खोज के कहीं से कुछ निकालना है, मतलब संजय झा, I bow down to you.
I love that attitude anywhere, Shehzad. You know, I love positivity.
Sanjay Jha is brand ambassador for optimism in Congress. 99 चुनाव हारो संजय झा की तरफ देखो, वो बोलेगा सब अच्छा है जी। संजय झा के रफाल वाले मामले सुप्रीम कोर्ट में डिसमिस हो, संजय बोलेगा सब अच्छा है जी। संजय झा का पेगासस केस डिसमिस हो, संजय बोलेगा सब अच्छा है जी। अच्छा, टुडे संजय झा डज नॉट वांट टू डिस्कस डिटेल्स। टुडे इज द डे टू डिस्कस डिटेल्स। संजय जी, लेट मी टेल यू, you wanted point number 1, stay on the full act. Yes, sir. You said full act should be stayed. The number 209 para of the order says that no full stay will be granted. Then how much stay they have got? 3 provisions partially stayed, not even stayed. Partially the relief has been given out of 48 provisions. That's less than 6%. But which ones? 5 years you cannot be the practicing Muslim part. The 5 years you have to be practicing Muslim. Then only you can make a waqf. Has not been stayed. It has only been clarified that till the time rules are not made, this will not be in effect. So no stay there also. Then they said that there should be no non-Muslim in the Waqf board. The court today has said that there can be at least 3. There can be non-Muslims also, and 3 can be there. On the CEO point, they wanted that there should be Muslim CEO. The court said we can have Muslim CEO, but we cannot say that this should be the provision. Then after that, they wanted Waqf by user to be completely protected. The Waqf by user has been removed and the court did not intervene. After that, they wanted tribal lands to be given away for Waqf. The court has said tribal lands cannot be given away for Waqf. So I want to know from my positive friend, Mr. Sanjay Jha, women representation has been ensured, Aga Khani representation has been ensured, Sushasan, Samajik Nyay and Samvidhan Suraksha has been ensured because tribunal's verdict will not be the final verdict. Now you are having a situation where there will be a kind of a full constitutional system that will be followed for all religions. It will not be a special preference for Muslims. So now tell me, what are you celebrating about? The fact that you wanted Vijaypura farmlands to be taken over by Waqf? You wanted Taj Mahal to be taken over by Waqf? You wanted the Eden Gardens to be taken over by Waqf? Today it is a resounding slap by those people, for those people who wanted Sharia above Samvidhan, who said that this law should be put in the dustbin. Their arguments have been put in the dustbin.
Well, I'm coming to you, Sanjay Jha, but I want to read out for you para 152 of the judgment, where the judgment notes that the Solicitor General, Mr. Tushar Mehta, has already said that the amendment in the Waqf by user matter will be applied prospectively and not retrospectively. Contention that lands vested in Waqf would be grabbed by government prima facie holds no water. They've said that there is no malintention in this one. Also, they have said that after noticing such instances of misuse, if the legislature finds that the concept of Waqf by user has to be abolished, and that too prospectively, in our view, the same cannot prima facie be said to be arbitrary. It is not arbitrary. And that was the biggest argument by the opposition.
But Navika, let me just give you the hard facts on why this is a big victory for the opposition and anybody who cares for a secular democracy in the country. Number one, there are 8,72,000 Waqf properties registered in India. Okay, now look at this data. 13,000 have legal cases, 59,000 have been encroached, 4,36,000 have an unclear status. Now, what is this verdict of the Supreme Court stated very categorically, and why Shehzad should be embarrassed about it? Because the verdict is very clear that the government now is not going to be the last authority to settle a dispute on whether a property is Waqf or not, which is exactly the roundabout way by which they were trying to make the district collector come into play. Yes, I agree with you, the Waqf by user is prospectively, and they were trying to make the retrospective effect a questionable item for dispute, which has now been totally negated.
Sanjay Jha, now you know, mythological issues cannot be brought up on this show, nor in the Supreme Court. No retrospective claim was being made by anybody. Everything was prospective, and that was in black and white there. But the fear-mongering that it would be retrospective, places of worship would be taken up, that really has gone out of the window. And Faizan Kidwai of the Samajwadi Party. My question to you is, ये जो डराने धमकाने का पूरा कोशिश था कि पूरी minorities डर जाएंगी और create a narrative such that they live in fear and they come to you because they are your vote bank, that has been completely negated by the verdict today, number one. And number two, Today, would you think it's an opportune moment to remind Mr. Rahul Gandhi that institutions in this country are working without fear or favor? The Supreme Court has stood up, taken notice, and in a democracy, the courts exist for whatever goes wrong. It will be settled, just as it did settle in the case of Rafale, in the case of various other issues. Faizan Kidwai?
Good evening, Navika. Good evening to you and to the fellow panelists. See, but of course, Navika, the Honorable Supreme Courts have time and again showed the government that you are not in charge. You won't have things the way you want. And the Honorable Supreme Court, the verdict today is a tight slap and a rap on the knuckles of Bharatiya Janata Party. The cognizance Supreme Court took of the most egregious provisions and just state them has exposed the malified intentions of Bharatiya Janata Party, which wanted to humiliate the Muslims to cater to its notorious right-wing section and do haq ki chori this time and humiliate the Muslims. Historically, it's been proved by the government data that it's not the Waqf which is acquiring land or illegally acquiring land. As per the 2025 data, 58,889 Waqf properties have been encroached. But instead of strengthening the Waqf board and making sure that the Waqf board recovers the encroached properties, they wanted to dilute the Waqf system itself. And as very rightly pointed out, this 5-year stupidity which the government wanted to bring has been stayed by the Honorable Court because it stinks of bias and violates the principles of fairness, which is part of Article 14 of our Constitution. So the Honorable Supreme Courts have shown that the government is not going to have things their way. Navika, I was going through a previous discussion and you were saying the government is not trying to snatch away the land of Muslims. Let me bring to your attention, Navika, in January 2021 in Bhopal, 1.2 hectares of Waqf graveyard was acquired by an NGO, the trustee of which is a BJP person. And he wanted to build a community center there despite the fact that it was a graveyard. There were dead bodies inside. But this is how Bharatiya Janata Party is functioning. And unfortunately, when the opposition raises its voice and wants to speak to the people, because it's the right of the individual irrespective whether they're Hindus or Muslims, we have to stand up irrespective of their religion. The government here, on the other hand, wants to create this divide on religious lines. But the opposition is not going to let this happen. I welcome this interim order of the Honorable Supreme Court and Navika, this unconstitutional bill which is flawed. I am sure in the next hearing things will become even better and Bharatiya Janata Party.
But you wanted the entire Waqf law changes to be thrown out. It hasn't happened yet. You're claiming victory. But you've raised some questions. Shehzad Poonawala, respond. Ishkaran coming.
Navika ji, I am requesting you and your producer today, 15 September, debate को एकदम आप सेव कर दो. More than your gold ornaments. क्यों पता है? आज सुप्रीम कोर्ट को बख्श दिया है. अब ईवीएम में भी सुप्रीम कोर्ट को बख्शना है. जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट का एसआईआर पर फैसला है तब भी सुप्रीम कोर्ट को बख्शना है. और ये 3 तलाक का फैसला ही सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने दिया था, तब तो ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट कम्युनल लग रहा था इनको. आज सुप्रीम कोर्ट बख्श गया ना. आज सुप्रीम कोर्ट हैज गिवन गुड वर्डिक्ट, राइट? वैसे ये वर्डिक्ट नहीं है, ये इंटरिम ऑर्डर है. फैजान is right on that. Sanjay was calling it verdict. Anyways, let me make 2 small points. So देखिए मैम, फैक्ट चोरी कैसे होती है? अब इनसे सिर्फ पूछिए कि वक्फ की प्रॉपर्टीज जो कुछ 10 लाख 11 लाख एकड़ थी वो 39 लाख एकड़ हुई है. ये बड़ी कैसे अगर मुस्लिमों की वक्फ की जमीन चोरी हो रही थी तो? दूसरी बात, आपका क्लेम ताजमहल का भी क्लेम करना, कभी छत्तीसगढ़ में तहसील ऑफिस क्लेम करना, कभी एयरफोर्स का जमीन क्लेम करना, कभी विजयपुरा का जमीन, अरे मुनव्वम चर्च का जमीन क्लेम करना. चर्च तक ने बोला कि हमारी जमीन तो बख्श दो. और तीसरी बात, इसमें इनकम कितनी थी 39 लाख एकड़ में से? 166 करोड़. नाविका जी, 1 मुंबई इज approximately 1 lakh acre. They have 39 Mumbais, but the income was the incoming was only 166 crore. It is because of politicians like Faizan Kidwai who pile up with the Samajwadi Party and Congress leaders, and they usurp the land meant for the poorest women, for the poorest people in the community, the Pasmanda, the Aga Khani, and all their lands were stolen by these people. Therefore, they are the ones who are shouting today.
Well, Vivek Srivastava, there was an attempt even to take away tribal lands. The Supreme Court has come कि भाई Waqf cannot put their handkerchief on tribal lands and say this is also Waqf land. I'm saying that the judgment is superb simply because it encourages transparency on the one hand, where you're right, where it was meant to be decided at the level of the revenue collector. Well, that is not the level. It will have to go to a quasi-judicial or a judicial authority. That correction has been made by the Supreme Court. But the biggest fact is that the Supreme Court has also called out your hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is where Waqf, donations can be made by non-Muslims to the Waqf boards, but non-Muslims cannot be appointed to the Waqf board. That hypocrisy has also been called out by the Supreme Court today. So all in all, transparency is there, correction that anything that you lay your hands or eyes on cannot be a Waqf property. Registration and documentation are important tenets that will have to be followed. Number 4, nobody is laying a claim on any land where worship has been done. All the fear-mongering has been brought to naught. I want to ask you today, put a hand on your heart and say, was it an attempt by the opposition to somehow try and instigate people, especially the minorities, by using this when the Supreme Court has found nothing malified in the reforms that have been pushed through? You're on mute, sir. Rarely are you ever mute, but today you are mute.
Whitewashing, you can keep on whitewashing. I'll get a big tin of white color dabba for you and Shehzad. दोनों लोग मिल करके खूब दीवार पे white paint लगाइए. Nothing is going to happen. It is a very welcome judgment, मैडम. whitewash मत करिए. उन्होंने सीधा थप्पड़ मार दिया है, बोला है क्वाजी जुडिशियल अथॉरिटी के पास जाना पड़ेगा. सरकार का कंट्रोल हो गया 0. और ऐसा कभी भी नहीं होता था. इट वॉज नेवर देयर कि वक्फ में आप गए और किसी को भी हमने अपनी आंख से देखा, हमें लाल किला अच्छा लगा या हमारे को कोई भी जगह अच्छी लगी तो वो वक्फ की हो गई. इट वॉज नेवर लाइक दैट. पेपर्स हैड टू बी गिवन, पेपर्स हैड टू बी शोड, सम प्रूफ हैड टू बी गिवन, तब वो जमीन आती थी. इट इज वेरी गुड. दूसरा, 5 साल तक अगर आप मुसलमान नहीं है तो आप दान नहीं दे सकते साहब. अब 5 साल तक कोई इस्लाम को फॉलो कर रहा है या नहीं कर रहा है, इसका सबूत कौन आएगा? सीसीटीवी कैमरा लगाएंगे शहजाद वाला.
नोटिफाई होंगे, रूल्स नोटिफाई होंगे और उसके हिसाब से सरकार डिसाइड कर लेगी. दैट हैज नॉट बीन स्टेड.
हाँ, वो सब स्टे होगा और कुछ नहीं फॉलो होगा. कैसे पता करेंगे कौन मुसलमान है कौन नहीं है, कौन
स्टे हुआ है? Has that been stayed? No. On that point, let me get in Ishkaran Bhandari. Has it been stayed or has it been only stopped till the time the rules are notified? Same as CA.
सीसीटीवी कैमरा लगाएंगे, क्या लगाएंगे बता तो दीजिए.
Ishkaran Bhandari.
कैसे करेंगे?
Ishkaran Bhandari.
Yes.
On this
Navika
point.
Ji, it's a yes. Navika Ji, yes. Navika ji, forgetting the shouting and the noise, I do not understand how people declare victory in this country. We have seen 99 seats is a victory and 240 seats is not a victory. So I'm not going into that. People forming government have lost the election. People forming leader of opposition have won the election. So we can declare anything sitting in TV studio on the roads. But what are the facts by which governance happens or what is the judgment of the court has to be seen. So let's deal with it piece by piece. Firstly, if the court had said that this clause where you say somebody has to practice for 5 years is stayed in its totality, that you could say is a stay on the clause. For example, for people to understand, CA, even if you bring an enactment, unless you frame the rules, how could it be implemented? We saw all that. So any clause needs to have certain rules. Those rules would need to be framed. And the Supreme Court says, if you frame the rules, the state government frames the rule, so it could go ahead. So that has not been stayed in the manner that they understand it's been stayed. The second aspect, which is even more important, because there was some material dispute. One of them was that Waqf by user is an inalienable right. If we do not have Waqf by user, we will not be able to practice our faith. The Supreme Court has clearly said that government has good reason to to abolish Waqf by user prospectively. In my mind, and I believe it should be a thorough investigation, it should be done retrospectively also in future by the government by bringing appropriate law. But as things stand right now, it has been stopped, and the reason was we have data from 2013 to 2025, how from 18 lakh acres it's become 39 lakh acres, how from almost 2.5 lakh properties it has become 8 lakh properties, fourfold growth, threefold growth. So that which was the main nub has been allowed by the court, that the government had a legitimate problem it was facing, that public lands will be taken, so it has brought in. What is the third aspect? You will have to do Waqf registration. You will not be able to say after 500 years or after 50 years, this is my land. That has been upheld. What has been upheld even more, which is important, is that it is not an exclusive domain where you cannot have a single non-Muslim as a part. Almost 3 out of 11, 25%, 27% has been allowed. Even on the CEO, the wording is important. It is even in the CEO, it is not said that the CEO shall be a Muslim. The language is that the states will try as far as possible to do it. There is some discretion left. We will have to see how the state exercises discretion. It is not a case of you will have to do it. So all these aspects are there. Along with it, ASI properties, where they were claiming all ASI properties as Waqf. Has that been stayed? Limitation law, has that been stayed? The bar on people coming and claiming and then saying tribunal only will decide, court's jurisdiction should be outside, has that been stayed? So I don't understand how victories are declared. Also, please understand it's an interim order. The final order, even if the government is happy, I would say the same thing. The final order will be very, very important. This is an interim order. But as things stand today, almost 90 to 95% of the law which the government wanted to bring in is operational, has not been stayed. And that's just a factual position.
Okay. Shadab Chauhan ji. Once a Waqf, always a Waqf. Once a Waqf, always a Waqf. ये एक लाइन मुझे ओवैसी साहब का याद है जो हमेशा वो कहते हैं, फेवरेट लाइन. अब ये once a Waqf, always a Waqf only will be applicable if there are papers. Number two, the fact that the Supreme Court says this. Petitioners had claimed that removal of clause that allowed non-Muslims to donate land to Waqf was arbitrary. Court said stand of petitioners is contradictory. On the one hand, petitioners claim that Waqf is specific to Islam, but now want non-Muslims also. मतलब non-Muslims Waqf लैंड में डोनेट कर सकते हैं लेकिन बोर्ड पर नहीं हो सकते. और यहाँ जो कोर्ट का ऑर्डर है उसमें ये कहा गया है ये कि इतना ज्यादा आप लोग दोनों तरफ क्यों खेल रहे हैं भाई. माल लेना ठीक है लेकिन रिकग्नाइज करना कि भाई नॉन मुस्लिम भी जानना चाहते हैं कि ये वक्फ प्रॉपर्टी कहां यूज हो रही है, लोगों का भला हो रहा है कि नहीं, वहां नहीं चाहिए आपको, वहां नहीं चाहिए. तो कहीं ना कहीं आपको लगता है कि ये जो पूरा लॉ बाहर नहीं फेंका गया और ऑलमोस्ट 90% हैज बीन ओकेड, ये किस तरफ की विक्ट्री है?
I will start my leader's statement. Once a Waqf, always a Waqf, and we will continue to say so. And one important thing, it's not a win or lose situation. We are committed to protect our constitutional validity of this law. We will fight for that. Because it's very clear, if there is everything is okay, then why Supreme Court states several clauses in this interim order regarding practicing Muslim, regarding the power of collector, regarding several other things. Why they state that? It's very clear that there are several things which government want to hide. And one important thing we want to ask that we request Supreme Court for final verdict also.
Final verdict आ जाएगा भाई, but how are you saying? How is the first claim that was made by Owaisi Saab was Modi government has brought this law so that mosques can be snatched. Supreme Court has said कोई मॉस्क नहीं किसी का छीना जा रहा. मुझे बताइए ये आपकी विक्ट्री कैसे हो गई?
No, I'm not saying victory or lose. I'm saying that it's not a victory or lose situation. We are fighting for our constitution.
You were fighting against Shehzad Poonawala today. Today the AIMIM has become philosophical.
नहीं, नाविका जी, let me.
देखिए ऐसा है.
Shehzad, give me 10 seconds, then you can speak. हमारा बिल्कुल क्लियर स्टैंड ये है कि जो एएसआई को आप बोल रहे हैं कि वो प्रोटेक्टेड रहेगा, आप ये कैसा डिसाइड कर रहे हैं कि जहां मैं नमाज पढ़ रहा था अगर वो एएसआई प्रोटेक्टेड मॉन्यूमेंट है उसका ऑनर वक्फ नहीं रहेगा, और अगर कोई कल मुसलमान होता है वो वक्फ नहीं कर सकता लेकिन वो किसी दूसरे रिलीजियस फेथ के लिए डोनेट कर सकता है? क्या आर्टिकल 300 जो है हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का वो अलाउ नहीं करता कि हम जिसको चाहे अपनी प्रॉपर्टी दे सकते हैं? क्या उसका वायलेशन नहीं है? आर्टिकल 14 का वायलेशन नहीं है? ये सब चीजें हम लोग कंसिडर ऑब्जेक्शन जो था वो रेज किया था। आज सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कुछ क्लॉजेस को स्टे किया है और हम चाहते हैं कि फाइनल वर्डिक्ट आए और जो पूरा ये ड्रैकोनियन लॉ है।
चलिए तब तक आप लोगों को डराने का काम करते रहेंगे। वेल, शहजाद रिस्पॉन्ड।
देखिए नाविका जी, हाउ वक्फ ऑपरेट्स आपके शो पर ही देखने मिला। एक सैयद ने एक पसमानदा का हक मार लिया। यही होता आ रहा है वक्फ पे अंदर कि जो गरीब पसमानदा मुसलमान है उसका अधिकार। देखो अभी फिर से मार रहे मेरा हक, फिर से लैंड ग्रैबिंग चल रही है। नाविका जी मुझे अभी 15-20 सेकंड
शादाब जी प्लीज सुन लीजिए।
नाविका जी देखिए, एक तो ये है कि मैं आज विवेक श्रीवास्तव के स्टेटमेंट, 2 स्टेटमेंट से शॉक्ड हूं। विवेक श्रीवास्तव ने ब्लैंकेट स्टेटमेंट दिया कि वक्फ इज नॉट डूइंग एनीथिंग रॉन्ग। केरला के मुनब्बम में क्रिश्चियन चर्च ने यह आरोप लगाया है कि हमारे क्रिश्चियन चर्च की जमीन ले ली है। आज विवेक श्रीवास्तव ने पूरे क्रिश्चियन समाज को झूठा बोला है और अपने ही चीफ मिनिस्टर पिनराई विजयन को झूठा बोला है, क्योंकि लेफ्ट पार्टीज आर सपोर्टिंग द चर्च देयर। तो मिस्टर विवेक श्रीवास्तव, हैव यू बिकम वकारुद्दीन? हैव यू बिकम सो मच इन लव विथ वन वोट बैंक पॉलिटिक्स कि आज आप ये इतना बड़ा रियलिटी भी नहीं देखना चाहते? सेकंड पॉइंट, विवेक जी प्लीज नोट पैरा 178, the section 3D was amended, which has been enacted with the objective of safeguarding interest of the tribals, the most vulnerable and marginalized sections. Do you want tribal land to be given off to the Waqf? Today the left parties must take a stand. And lastly, third point, hypocrisy देखिए नाविका। अरे तीसरा पॉइंट तो नाविका, सीईओ तो मुसलमान हो पर ये समाजवादी पार्टी आजम खान को महाकुंभ का चीफ बना देगी। ये महाकुंभ का चीफ बनाएंगे आजम खान को।
एक प्रोग्राम है ना, महाकुंभ तो एक प्रोग्राम है। महाकुंभ इज नॉट एन इंस्टीट्यूशन और एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन।
वो प्रोग्राम हिंदुओं का नहीं है ना, मुसलमानों का है, वो हिंदुओं का नहीं है।
पहले तो मेरे पसमानदा मुसलमान भाई यहाँ पे प्रूव करें कि वो मुसलमान है भी या नहीं, 5 साल प्रैक्टिस करने हैं या नहीं कर रहे हैं। इनके घर में लगा सीसीटीवी।
जब रूल्स बनेंगे तो आपको भी प्रूव करना पड़ेगा। बट फैजान की भाई,
हाँ नाविका देखिए, एक तो ये जो शहजाद साहब हैं बहुत एक्रोनिम्स बोलने के शौकीन हैं, और जो इनके हालात आज हैं इनके लिए आपके लिए साहब एक एक्रोनिम है। आज आपकी हालत KBKN हो गई है। डिसाइफर करिए, इसको कहते हैं खिसियानी बिल्ली खंबा नोचे। इंटरिम ऑर्डर के बाद अभी और ज्यादा आपके साथ होने वाला है। और सुनिए, आप जो अमित शाह साहब के बारे में समझा रहे थे कि अमित शाह साहब ने पार्लियामेंट में बोला था, साफ झूठ बोला था। 39 एकड़ ऑफ लैंड बोला था वक्फ के पास है। एज पर द गवर्नमेंट्स ओन डेटा द वक्फ हैज 9.4 लाख एकर्स ऑफ लैंड एंड देयर इज नो ऑफिशियल डॉक्यूमेंट व्हिच इज सपोर्टेड बाय मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ, रुक जाइए, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ माइनॉरिटी अफेयर्स या वक्फ असेसमेंट सिस्टम ऑफ इंडिया। अमित शाह साहब झूठ बोल रहे थे। फिर आपके रिजिजू साहब झूठ बोल रहे थे। वो कह रहे थे 123 प्रॉपर्टीज दिल्ली में यूपीए ने दे दिया। अरे भैया, उस वक्त आम आदमी की सरकार थी और वो एक लॉन्ग पेंडिंग कोर्ट का केस था जो दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट में था, उस हिसाब से डिनोटिफिकेशन हुआ था। तो झूठ बोलने के लिए आप लोग इतना उत्सुक रहते हैं, क्या खाना नहीं हजम होता है उसके बिना? पानी के साथ झूठ लेते हैं या किसी और चीज के साथ झूठ?
मुझे पता नहीं, लेकिन आज जो फील गुड चल रहा है, वेयर एवरीबडी हैज वन। इश्करन कमिंग टू यू। शहजाद, होल्ड ऑन इश्करन।
नाविका जी, yes. Navika ji, the one import of the order people will realize slowly, because you see last 10 years the entire effort has been we will not show papers, हम कागज नहीं दिखाएंगे. Be it NRC, we will not show paper. What is SIR? What is the entire election thing? We will not show papers. You want, we will be in trouble if you are asked to show papers. Be it Waqf, be it Waqf, be it Waqf, हम कागज नहीं दिखाएंगे, वक्फ बाय यूजर है. सो आप पिछले 10 साल को देखिए. द डिबेट एंड द फाइट इन इंडिया इज, will people have to show proof and documents, or we will have illegal immigrants, we will have illegal occupation of property, we will have illegal voters. All three big different cases. The thread is we will not show documents. Today, by this order of Supreme Court, registration तो करनी पड़ेगी, कागज तो दिखाने पड़ेंगे. Don't interrupt, I want to finish my point, 10 seconds.
I'm completely out of time. I'm completely out of time. Complete your point, Ishkaran. Complete.
This is not correct. The import is you will have to, the import of the decision today is you will have to show paper registration होगी, तो registration के लिए documents चाहिए होंगे. How you became the owner?
Once a वक्त, always a वक्त नहीं भैया, paper है तो ही वक्त है.
In other cases also.
Well, Sanjay Jha, I'm so short of time, but I'll give you 5 seconds.
Yeah, very quickly, Navika, 2 points. The Muslim community was extremely apprehensive because they saw how the BJP as a political party...
Today will you tell them they don't need to be apprehensive because there is a Supreme Court?
No, but remember how the BJP suddenly made the Places of Worship Act part of India's parliamentary legislation. They went and wanted to challenge that in the courts. That tells you the intent of this political party. And
okay, all right. I know. You know, you bring in every act, Shehzad Poonawala. You have an acronym for Faizan. I know you are itching to say that, please.
Navika, JBKKKKSD. झूठ बोले कौवा काटे, काले कौवे से डरियो. ये है एक्रोनिम इनकी पार्टी का.
इनका जेजेपी है, झूठा जुमलेबाज पार्टी. जेजेपी झूठा जुमलेबाज.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think very soon we'll have to have an acronym debate more than debate on laws, because laws mein to I think the victory. If you look at the following pointers, number 1. Rahul Gandhi called the Waqf law weapon to marginalize Muslims, usurp their rights. Well, the Supreme Court says there is no case made out to stay the entire act. So that argument goes out of the window. Government wants to snatch our mosques and raise our graveyards. Asaduddin Owaisi said this. The Supreme Court has said land grab claim by petitioner holds no water. Nobody is grabbing any land. And inclusion of non-Muslims is an attack on the religion was also stated by the opposition. The Supreme Court has said no case for stay on including non-Muslim members. As far as I'm concerned, the biggest provisions that were there in the law and the law itself has stood the scrutiny of the Supreme Court. Minor changes being claimed as a big victory sounds good, because for me it is now the leading light that the opposition loves the institutions in our democracy. Starting with Supreme Court, we are waiting when they will have the same respect for the Election Commission. Well, we leave it at that. Thank you very much to all my panelists joining me on debate number 1.